Hello everyone, this is Dr. Wang once again. Welcome to this video where we'll be discussing the speaking, listening, reading, and writing aspects of the greeting
您好
and the characters associated with it. First, let me introduce to you a respectful greeting in Chinese.
您好
This phrase is commonly used to greet elders or when meeting someone for the first time. Let's start by looking at the character.
您
This character is composed of two parts. The upper part represents addressing someone of the same generation, and the lower part is the character for heart. Ni is a combination of ren and arrow characters. To aid memory and maintain consistency with pronunciation, we replaced arrow with a needle, allowing us to associate it with needle and create a memorable connection for both the pronunciation and character of ni. The lower part of the character nin is the character xin, which means heart. The pictograph for xin resembles an anatomically opened heart, and you can see from the character that the longest stroke resembles the tip of a heart. The three dots above can represent water, indicating flowing liquid, which in this context represents blood. In ancient China, people believed that the heart controlled reasoning and emotions. We can use this association to link thinking and the pronunciation of heart together. Additionally, they believed that the heart managed emotions. Utilizing this connection, we can link
心
and the pronunciation of heart to help remember the pronunciation of heart, which is
心心心心心
The character nin is formed by combining u and a heart. We can visualize this by adding a heart below a person pointed to by a needle. This helps us remember the writing of nin. When writing, we revert the needle back to an arrow. The needle is only imagined during pronunciation. By switching between arrow and needle, we can remember both the pronunciation and writing of nin. When pronouncing, think of needle, and when writing, think of arrow. Do you find this method of memorization convenient or confusing? Please share your thoughts in the comments, as it will help us improve future creative Chinese language teaching. Let's compare the characters ni and nin. The difference between the two is that the common u doesn't have a heart beneath the u. The respectful u has a heart beneath the common u, becoming yin. Is a combination of characters, with a heart added below to denote respect. In terms of pronunciation, it's similar to u, but with a rising tone towards the end, expressing a respectful attitude. When I taught MBA courses at the Foreign Language School of Hanoi National University in Vietnam, students would always place their glasses lower than mine when toasting, as a sign of respect. From the level of their glasses, you could tell who was most respected. We use this Vietnamese cultural association to help you remember that yin is pronounced with a rising tone towards the end.
您您您您您您您您您您您
Now, let's move on to the second character in 你好, which is hao. We've already explained this character in detail in the first episode, covering its listening, speaking, reading, writing, and memory methods. In simple terms, it's a combination of the characters for woman and son, symbolizing the concept of a wife and son being good. If you need more detailed information, please refer to the explanations in the first episode. Next, let's look at a complete sentence, 你好吗? This sentence means, how are you, in English. It's essentially, you, followed by a questioning particle ma, placed at the end to form a question. The particle ma is also a combination character, formed by adding the character ko to ma. Let's first introduce the character ko. Is a pictographic representation of a mouth and is associated with the sound Coke. In the context of thirst, many Americans often reach for a Coke. In Taiwan, ko is even used in the name of the Coca-Cola brand.
口口口
Now, let's introduce the character ma. This character has evolved from a very realistic pictograph. We can see that the four dots represent the four legs of the horse, while the middle part represents the body of the horse. The upper horizontal stroke represents the head of the horse. In the middle, there are clear depictions of the horse's neck and mane.
马，马，马，马，马，马，马，马，马，马，马，马，马。
Uses ko to indicate its role as a question particle, and its pronunciation is based on ma. However, the tone shifts from the third tone of ma to a lighter tone in ma.
妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈，妈。 Ma.
Now, let's practice saying the sentence, 你好吗? 你好吗? Saying this sentence always reminds me of a story. There was once a person who learned the phrase 你好吗? And practiced it tirelessly day and night. He repeated the phrase so many times that it turned into a long string. 你好吗?你好吗?你好吗?你好吗?你好吗?你好吗?你好. But when he encountered a Chinese person and wanted to greet them, he had forgotten where the phrase began and ended. He ended up truncating the phrase to my ni hao. The meaning of this phrase is, Mother, how are you? When he saw the person's puzzled expression, he realized he had made a mistake. In a flustered attempt to correct himself, he rearranged the order and asked, Ni ma hao? Which means, how is your mother? This is because the light tone ma sounded like a shortened ma, and in Chinese, ni ma means your mother. The person unintentionally made a joke to highlight the importance of not just memorizing, but understanding Chinese. If you want to correctly ask, how is your mother, you should say ni ma hao ma? Here, we encounter the new character ma, which means mother. The pronunciation of this character is nearly the same across various cultures since it's often one of the first sounds babies make. Is a combination of the radical nu, meaning female, and ma, pronounced like a soft ma. To greet your own mother, you could say ma, ni hao ma, which translates to mother, how are you? In Mandarin, there are 4 tones, plus a neutral tone. In this episode, we've learned 3 similar pronunciations, the first tone
ma,
which combines nu and
ma,
and the third tone
ma,
inspired by the neighing sound of a horse. We've also introduced ma and its neutral tone. Let's practice the 4 tones of a ma.
ma, 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 ma.
In this lesson, you've learned 6 new words. Nian is a polite way to address someone. Xin represents the heart. Ko means mouth. Ma signifies horse. Ma is a question particle, and ma means mother. In this episode, we've learned the following phrases.
您好,
which is a respectful greeting towards elders. The second phrase is 你好吗, which translates to how are you in English. In the joke mentioned, we discussed asking about someone else's mother, 你妈好吗, and greeting one's own mother, 妈你好吗. In the first episode, we explained how the characters ren and er combine to form ni, as well as how nu and zi come together to create hao. If you're not familiar with these 6 words, feel free to revisit the first episode to learn from their explanations and the stories behind their character development. These stories will help you easily learn these 6 words. Thank you for watching, and if you find our video content encouraging, please like, subscribe, and feel free to share with friends who are interested in learning Chinese in an easy and effective way. Until next time.